I never expected a millionaire to embarrass me, but her shocking truth left us all speechless. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. One minute, I was in the warmth of a crowded hall, surrounded by laughter and chatter. The next, silence swept through like a cold wind slicing through my heart. I looked around, eyes wide in disbelief. Sarah, the woman who had it all, was standing on a stage. Sparkling chandeliers overhead cast dancing shadows on her trembling hands. Her designer dress hugged her like a second skin, yet it was as if it weighed her down too. She was a goddess, but in that moment, she looked more like a lost soul that we had all gathered in anticipation. The annual charity gala was her baby, a chance to flaunt wealth while pretending to save the world. But then she did the unthinkable. "I have a secret," her voice broke, echoing across the room. The chandelier stopped its dance. The audience leaned closer, breaths caught, hearts pounding. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. People whispered nervously. Some glanced away, unsure if they were ready for what was to come. I could feel my own heartbeat. Each thump resonated in my ears like a war drum, building tension. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "I'm not who you think I am." The truth tumbled out, raw and jagged. Gasps rippled across the room. My stomach twisted. How could this be happening? She had spinning fantasies, lavish escapades, the perfect life everyone envied. Her parents were self-made millionaires. But she wasn't just a pretty face riding on their coattails. She was holding a darkness. Shadows that threatened to pull her under. I wanted to scream, to ask her to stop. But my voice was lost in the tide of murmurs. The crowd, once adoring, turned judgmental. Eyes narrowed, fingers pointed. Then she revealed her truth. I was adopted. The real me is from a small town, from nothing. I've hidden it all, she gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. I could see her vulnerability, her pain. It broke something inside me. I understood that desperation, the need to be more than your past. The whispers grew louder, doubt injecting venom into the air. The tension in the room thickened. Bated breaths filled the silence. I felt a lump in my throat as uncertainty settled around us like invisible chains. Was her fortune really built on lies? My heart ached for her but also for the life I thought I understood. What would become of us? Of her? Would they throw her away, banish her from their lavish lives? I was left standing, wavering between support and shock. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The applause that once echoed through the room dwindled into a murmur of disbelief. As the crowd looked on, Sarah's confession hung heavily in the air, changing the vibrant, glitzy atmosphere into a disorienting haze. I could feel the collective rejection, the judgmental glances piercing her like arrows. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back from this precipice, but I felt shackled by my own indecision that I slipped from the periphery where I had been standing, unnoticed and overwhelmed. I needed to escape, the crowd's shifting emotions mirrored my own turmoil. I found myself in a dimly lit corridor, away from the glamorous chaos of the gala. Leaning against the cool wall, I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. But even in solitude, the clamor of whispered judgments followed me, weighty and relentless. I opened my eyes, peering into the shadows, wishing they could swallow me whole. In that solitary moment, I couldn't help but recognize the fragility of masks. We all wore masks that made a person seem larger than life, even as the truth threatened their foundation. Just an hour ago, I was one of many adoring fans, captivated by Sarah's story, blissfully ignorant of the turmoil brewing within her. Would I have been there to support her if I had known? With a heavy heart, I began to walk toward the restroom, where I could gather my thoughts. But as I turned the corner, I spotted a small group huddled together, gossiping intensely. Their laughter was sharp and cruel. She was never worth their time, one voice sneered. Now shall be just another cautionary tale. Each word landed like a punch, serving only to amplify my guilt for having once glorified her. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was Lucy, one of Sarah's closest friends. She stood a few paces away, her face pale and haggard. As Sarah's revelation echoed in her mind, her whole demeanor shifted, uncertainty crumpling her usual confidence. With empathy stirring within me, I approached her cautiously. "Lucy," I whispered, trying to bridge the chasm of despair that had formed. "What do you think?" She turned to me, tears pooling in her eyes. "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "I've spent so long idolizing her, believing we were on this pedestal only to realize it was built on secrets." Before I could formulate a comforting response, the door swung open and Sarah stepped into view, looking noticeably smaller under the fluorescent lights, lined with shock and despair. She glanced around, catching sight of us. The shadows of her past surrounded her, wrapping tighter with each hesitant step she took. "Please, she faltered, her voice trembling as she approached us. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just thought I could be something more, something special." My heart ached for her. Her honesty felt like a rare jewel amidst the chaos. "You are special, Sarah," I blurted out, conviction surging within me despite the fear that her words had sparked in diligent whispers. "Don't let this define you." "Easy for you to say," she whispered back, her shoulders slumping as the reflection of her shattered facade washed over her. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything that I am." That moment, the sincerity in her eyes pulled me closer to the edge between my own convictions and the world's expectations. How often had I felt like I had to hide? Presenting a facade that glittered while hiding insecurities that threatened to surface? Our conversation was interrupted by a loud crash reverberating through the hall, and the sound seemed to steal all remaining warmth from the room. We rushed back to find the table tipped over, glass strewn everywhere. A couple of high-profile patrons were arguing, their voices rising like an angry tide. I exchanged worried glances with Lucy and Sarah. "That could easily be us," I murmured, anxiety coiling tightly, something shifting uncomfortably in the air. "They'll turn on you in an instant, just like." But as Sarah watched, her expression changed. Something flickered in her eyes, a determination sparked. Maybe it's time I truly show the world who I am, not just the shine I've created." And just when I thought there might be a glimpse of hope on the horizon, her phone buzzed rapidly in her pocket. She pulled it out, her face draining of color. "What is it?" I asked, my heart sinking further as I noticed the dread etched across her features. "That it's my adoptive parents' theory here. They've been watching," she whispered hoarsely, the words like glass shards. "They want to talk." As I stood beside Sarah, the weight of our situation closed in on us like a vice. I feared that this revelation would just pull her deeper into a conflict she might never find her way out of. Would they accept her truth, or would the past swallow her whole? With her family standing at the brink, shadows from both her past and the galling uncertainty of her future loomed larger than ever. I felt unmoored once again, caught in the very heart of a storm that I knew was only beginning. The tension in the hall thickened as Sarah's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto the floor. A hush fell over the gathering, as if the crowd was holding its breath, waiting for the next act of this unfolding drama. I watched her eyes widen, reflecting not just fear, but a kaleidoscope of emotions that battled within her: shame, longing, desperation, and a hint of defiance. "Sarah," I began, reaching out to touch her arm, feeling the tremors that coursed through her. "You don't have to face them alone." But as her gaze lifted to meet mine, I could see the walls she had built around her heart rising once more. Old wounds reopened, threatening to bleed into this chaotic moment. "You don't understand," she replied, her voice cracking. they've always been more concerned about appearances, about what I could be for them rather than who I am. I've spent my whole life being a reflection of their desires. Before I could respond, Lucy stepped closer, her presence adding a flicker of strength. Sarah, maybe they need to see the real you to understand. You've hidden for so long. What if facing them means finally breaking free? But before Sarah could digest her words, her adoptive parents entered the hall like a storm cloud, drawing all eyes toward them. The air sparked with tension as they scanned the room, their expressions a mixture of concern and something akin to anger. I felt a wave of sympathy washing over me but laced with the icy chill of dread for what Sarah would have to confront. Sarah, sweetheart, thank you for agreeing to meet us here, her mother said, modulating her voice as if she were addressing a large audience rather than a daughter in turmoil. We saw what happened, and we need to talk about what you've shared. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, forming a halo around Sarah's family as the murmurs intensified. I glanced at Lucy, who was biting her lip, struggling to suppress her thoughts on the brewing storm. Sarah's mother gestured towards the exit, a silent command that left no room for defiance. Let's step outside, just the three of us. Dread knotted in my stomach as I watched Sarah inch closer to the door, her composure crumbling like fragile glass with each step. The whispers from the crowd grew sharper. What will they say? What does she even deserve after that confession? Each word was both an inquiry and a judgment, echoing Sarah's own insecurities. Wait! I called out, my voice louder than I intended. Sarah paused, glancing back, her eyes wide with confusion. You shouldn't go without someone by your side, she hesitated, her indecision palpable, tightly woven with the emotions roiling within her. But then I noticed the flicker of rebellion take shape in her gaze, as if challenging her parents' authority for the first time. No, she murmured, I need to do this. I need to know if they can accept me as I am now. Lucy's hand gripped my arm, squeezing it with a mix of hope and fear. There was a shift in her expression, a silent plea that conveyed how much Sarah needed this moment to confront not only her past but also the expectations of those who had shaped it. I could feel my fear press against the growing courage in her heart. As Sarah stepped through the exit, the crowd erupted in a flurry of whispers, some mocking, others inquisitive, but all fixated on the unfolding story. My heart raced as I followed a step behind, determined to support her, even if I couldn't fix the mess that lay before her. Outside, the cool night air brushed against our warm skin, a stark contrast to the tempest brewing inside. Sarah's parents stood at a distance, their backs turned, whispering urgently. I could see the way they stiffened as Sarah approached, their careful postures rigid as if carved from stone. Mom! Dad, Sarah began, her voice steady, trembling at the edges. I need you to listen to me without interruptions. The moment twisted itself, laden with suspense, as her parents turned slowly, their faces a canvas of bewilderment and disappointment. I held my breath, ready to dive into a world of painful honesty and the catharsis that could come with it. However, just as Sarah opened her mouth to divulge her path, she was interrupted by the sudden shrill of her phone buzzing on the ground, vibrating to life again. It had landed face down, so I couldn't see the screen, but I knew this was not good. Her parents seemed to recoil at the noise, shifting uncomfortably, clearly not ready for whatever was about to unfold next. Ignore it, her father snapped, while Sarah's gaze fluttered down, an uncharacteristic tremor in her hands taking hold again. Sarah, don't let it distract you, I urged, feeling desperation clawing at me. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed again, persistent, demanding attention. The ambience felt claustrophobic as her parents glared at the device, with a silent agreement forged in the depths of uncertainty. Sarah bent down, picking up her phone. The look on her face shifted from confusion to horror, her eyes widening as she read whatever was on the screen. Oh God. No, she murmured, and that single phrase felt like it echoed in the night sky. There was a world of anguish in her tone, a guttural fear that sent chills racing down my spine. What is it? I asked as panic rose within me. But as I edged closer, the expression that crossed her face was unrelenting and hollow, as if she had just seen her worst fears materialize before her. Everything, it's changing. Everything is about to change, she gasped softly. And just like that, the promise of confrontation, the weight of past and future, seemed to hang in the air like suspended glass, fragile and unpredictable, waiting for the slightest push to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The ground beneath my feet felt unsteady as I watched Sarah's face drain of color, her expression a mix of confusion and dread. The world around us faded into a blur, the rustling leaves and murmurs from the crowd becoming an indistinct hum. I took a step closer, desperate to bridge the gap that had grown not only between her and her parents but between Sarah and her own self. "Sarah, please, what did it say?" I implored, my voice low but firm, aware that her parents were still hovering like two storm clouds, ready to rain disapproval. She swallowed hard, not breaking her gaze from the glowing screen, as if the words inscribed there had taken on an otherworldly significance. "It's a message from my boss at the gallery. They just announced a gala next month. It's a fundraiser, and they want me to curate the exhibition." An excited murmur sparked within me, wanting to erupt into a full-throated cheer. "That's amazing. You should be proud. This is your moment." But the glimmer of hope in her expression only lasted a fleeting moment before it drowned under the weight of the expectations that loomed. "But the theme is family ties," she whispered, the two words hanging between us like a leaden weight. "I can't do that. I don't know how to face them. I can't draw on those ties when they've always held me back." Her parents took a subtle step forward, silhouettes of authority that exuded both intimidation and urgency. "Sarah, this is a wonderful opportunity," her mother said, a veneer of forced cheer masking the tension in her voice. "You might want to think about how you could represent us in this exhibition." The rejection of her struggle, even in the face of this proud moment, stung my heart. "You can't be serious," I snapped before I could rein myself in. "This is about her, not you. She deserves to celebrate who she's become, not fit into the mold you created for her." Caught between offense and admiration, Sarah's eyes flickered with something like gratitude, but also fear of escalating this confrontation further. "Mom, Dad," she addressed them, her voice shaking yet resolute. "What I create should reflect who I truly am. I have to be authentic for once. This is my art, your art." Her father's laughter was harsh, a cruel edge slicing through the atmosphere. "Is that what you think it is? This painful rebellion? Please don't twist this against me," Sarah begged, tears surfacing but not falling. "I'm wrestling with everything I've ever known. I want to make a difference, but this is hard. It feels like you'll only be proud if I fit into a narrative that isn't my own." In that vulnerable fissure of honesty, the crowd shifted closer, their curiosity piqued, as if they could finally witness something real unfolding before them. Lucy stood next to me, her knuckles white from the tension in her grip. I wished desperately I could sweep Sarah into my arms, but I knew better than to disrupt these sacred moments of truth. "I'm not sure who or what you're trying to be," her mother said, the disappointment lurking in her tone, "but we raised you to be successful, to elevate our family name. You owe it to us to consider how this affects everyone." "Ugh! You don't get it," Sarah shouted back, her voice fierce, even as it cracked under the strain. "I've spent my life putting everyone else first, and I'm tired of being the perfect little daughter you envisioned. I want the freedom to make choices for myself, not for you." Then, in that dramatic exaltation, Sarah's phone buzzed again, a double intrusion this time. Her eyes flickered once more to the screen, and her expression morphed from anger to something dark, a realization dawning upon her like an unexpected storm. "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly small, her features transformed into masks of shock and uncertainty. "What if my boss is right? What if I can't even do this? What if—" Her next words faltered, tangled in her throat, her gaze darting between her phone and her parents. "What is it?" I asked, stepping into the space beside her, shielding her momentarily from the imposing shadows of her family. But the disquieting truth hung heavily in the air, and I soon realized we were all wondering what had just tipped on the precipice of change. Without answering, she typed furiously, her brow knitted in concentration. "They've just sent a list of potential attendees," she said, her voice losing the steady confidence it had briefly claimed. Including my birth parents. An involuntary gasp escaped from Lucy, as she clasped her hands tightly together. A heavy silence draped over us, the crowd converted from spectators to unwitting participants in this gut-wrenching unfolding. Sarah's past, unveiled before her, stood as a ghost waiting to materialize in the flesh. Now they want me to confront them publicly. She muttered, fear thickening in her voice as the enormity of the revelation crashed around us. What if they don't even want me? What if they blame me for everything? But there, nestled in the lowest depths of her fear, I sensed a ripple of something resilient, a flicker of hope that perhaps confronting her truths, however excruciating, could lead her toward the freedom she so desperately sought. The air crackled with uncertainty as I grabbed her hand, feeling the tremor within her, squeezing tighter, a silent promise that I would be there, no matter the storm to come. And then I saw it unfurl, the moment suspended in time, tipping into chaos, as Sarah began to take a step forward, her next decision poised to alter everything for her and for us all. The moment stretched, a taut string vibrating between Sarah and her past. Lucy's hand slipped from mine, and I felt a frantic pulse in my veins, dread mingling with the kind of electric anticipation that came before a great storm. Sarah stood frozen, the weight of her decision colliding with the specters of her birth parents. Within her eyes, the tempest of emotions swirled: fear, vulnerability, and an undeniable yearning to reclaim her narrative. It's just a name on a list, I whispered, trying to inject a sense of calm into the chaos. You don't have to do anything until you're ready, but there was a rigidity to her posture, a fierce determination battling against her doubt. She glanced back at her parents, whose faces were now muted canvases of delight and disdain, their expectations clashing with the courage blooming in our midst. I can't keep running away, she murmured, half to herself, half to the universe. This could be my chance to reclaim everything they've stolen from me. The crowd shifted again, their presence a growing warmth against the chill of confrontation. A few familiar faces sparkled with concern and support, silently urging her on. Among them was Emily, an old friend from art school, whose eyes offered a wordless promise of solidarity. Just then, Sarah took a deep breath, a flicker of purpose igniting in her chest. That I have to face them, she announced, steeling herself, a warrior preparing for battle. It's time for me to confront what they represent in my life, even if it shrouds me in dread. Her parents exchanged sharp glances, their judgment evident in every taut line of their bodies. You, her mother began, but Sarah cut her off. No. Not now. You've both had your say for too long. The force of her words shocked even me, a fierce roar that cut through the murmurs of the assembled crowd. This is not about you. This is about me and my truth. In that moment, I saw Sarah, really saw her, stripped bare of the weight and expectations imposed on her. The tears she held back shimmered like diamonds before her brave facade. I wished I could wrap my arms around her, to shield her from the backlash this could bring, but I stood rooted in awe, respecting this pivotal moment of her life. Then, unexpectedly, a voice echoed from the periphery of the crowd. Sarah? Is that really you? The voice was rich, laced with incredulity and confusion. I turned to see a tall figure weaving through the spectators. Emily's sister, Christine, someone I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes were wide, brimming with disbelieving wonder, and she looked much older than I remembered. Christine? Sarah's voice wavered. What are you doing here? I received an invitation to the gala, and Christina's eyes darted to Sarah's parents, and she hesitated, sensing the tension in the air. I came to see if it was really you. I wasn't expecting you to be. So she let the sentence hang, uncertain how to wrap her mind around the changes they had both endured. I wasn't expecting any of this. None of us were, I guess, Sarah replied softly. But I can't pretend anymore. Everything shifted dramatically. The hopeful energy in the air wavered and wobbled, imbuing the moment with a deeper reckoning. Christine moved closer, her brow furrowing with concern. Is it true? Are you really going to confront them? Yes, Sarah said, a note of defiance underscoring her resolve. I need to know who I am, and to begin that journey, I need to face the people who made me question if I was ever worthy of love. As the words fell like petals from her lips, I watched as Christina's expression morphed from concern to a gentle resolve. If you do this, he'll be right here. No one should do this alone. The warmth of that unexpected kindness surged through Sarah like a soft pulse, igniting the hopes that had flickered dimly beneath her apprehension. But even as that small moment of solidarity unfolded, the look on her parents' faces grew stormier. You can't be serious, her father interjected, gripping his wife's arm. This is not just about you, Sarah. You are making a fool of yourself in front of everyone. I could see the contrast of support against their harshness, their attempt to reel her in darkened by this burgeoning community that had formed. It was as if each individual spark of encouragement from the crowd ignited a roaring flame within Sarah, but then, the air thickened with a sudden chill as everything shifted once more. Sarah's phone buzzed again, insistent and demanding. She glanced down and paled, her fingers hesitated over the screen, the brightness illuminating her anxious expression. It's from my boss again, she stammered, her voice trembling. They've sent the finalized list of attendees and her breath hitched. My birth parents will be presenting the keynote speech. The reality of her confrontation crashed down upon her like a tidal wave, stripping her of that last vestige of hope. The crowd pressed closer, but I saw the uncertainty fracture the brave facade she had built so resolutely just moments ago. I can't do this. I can't face them in front of everyone, she said, her voice quaking. That I stepped forward, meeting her gaze, ready to remind her that she wasn't alone. But just as I opened my mouth, ready to formulate the words of comfort, I caught a glimpse of Christine's face. She, too, was frozen, her eyes wide as if a haunting realization had dawned upon her. And without breaking her gaze from Sarah's haunted expression, she murmured softly, "Who exactly is presenting?" At that moment, my heart dropped into my stomach, dread unfurling like a dark cloud overhead. I turned to look at the names flickering on the screen of Sarah's phone. As it revealed the birth parents' names, a shocked gasp tore through the crowd, one that thrummed with the realization that some truths, the very foundation of Sarah's journey, were poised to emerge in the most unforgiving light. What have they done? What have they kept hidden? The question rippled through me as time hung suspended. The precarious cliff we all stood upon turned treacherous as the shadows of Sarah's past threatened to pull her down, all while hope held its breath on the brink of revelation. The tension was palpable, a weight pressing down on each of us as the fragmented identities of Sarah and her parents collided in that moment of revelation. I felt the collective breath of the crowd, the murmur of shock weaving through like a wildfire. The air thickened with anxiety, everyone watching, waiting for Sarah's next move. What do you mean, Christine? She finally managed to choke out, her voice almost a whisper, brimming with confusion and dread. What do you know about them? Christine shifted closer, her brows knit together with worry, as if piecing together her own fragmented memories. I didn't know much back then, she stammered. But I heard rumors, things whispered behind closed doors when I visited. They kept connections with people in high places, wealthy families. Your name appeared now and then in conversations, but no one ever said much. It was all so quiet. Her voice trailed off, like a ship adrift without an anchor. My heart raced for Sarah. I could see the flicker of the storm reflecting in her eyes, the confusion morphing into anger, disbelief, and a growing sense of betrayal. What did that past mean for her future? I was terrified to consider the depths of the truths she might unearth. None of this makes sense. She cried out, the tumult of emotions spilling from her like a torrent. Why did no one ever tell me? Why did they keep it from me? Her parents were silent, their expressions hardened to stone. I am so sorry, Sarah, Christine said softly, extending her hand as if to bridge the chasm between them. I wish I had known how this would all unravel. I want to help you, but it's all a tangled mess. Yet, against the dark backdrop of uncertainty, a small flicker of kindness gleamed in Christina's eyes. I moved closer to Sarah, putting a hand on her shoulder, trying to ground her with my presence as I navigated my own tangled emotions. I wanted to shield her from the barrage of revelations and the painful dissection of her identity, but the truth was an unruly beast, ever determined to escape its cage. As the murmurs of the crowd crescendoed, whispers passed like waves around us, each one reverberating with speculative assumptions and fearful conjectures. I'd been caught in a moment where the shards of Sarah's past began to churn, threatening to overwhelm the delicate balance she had fought so hard to establish. "Sarah, if you need to take a step back," I began, but she shook her head vehemently. "No. This is my life. I refuse to be a victim of their deceit." The resoluteness in her tone sent ripples of strength through the air, igniting everyone who heard it. Still, beneath my admiration was profound concern. This was not just about facing her parents, it was about unpacking the legacy they had bestowed upon her, a legacy that had somehow been veiled in shadows and silence. "That I need to know what they're going to say," Sarah said finally, her voice steadying. She lifted her phone, her gaze steely. "I need to understand. It's time for the truth, whether I'm ready or not." Even as she put on a brave front, her hands trembled slightly as she studied the screen, almost as if she were awaiting a spell to be cast, revealing dark secrets hidden beneath a shimmering facade. As she prepared to confront the impending confrontation, Christine added, "Sarah, if you're about to find out more than you bargained for, I will stand with you." The ground felt unstable beneath us, and I could only hope that the pillars of truth and hope could somehow withstand the tremors that lay ahead. Suddenly, the lights dimmed slightly, the stage illuminated in rich hues of gold and blue, capturing the attention of every single soul present. The murmurs faded, replaced by an expectant hush. Sarah's breath hitched again as the announcer's voice sliced through the weighty silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome the keynote speakers of this evening, the illustrious Thomas and Martha Jenkins, here to share their life lessons and wisdom." A gasp slipped from Sarah's lips, and reality crashed in with a vengeance. I took a step back, instinctively searching the crowd for support as the realization struck me. The names echoed in my mind as a sickening truth wrapped tightly around my heart. Thomas and Martha Jenkins were not just any wealthy couple, they were the very people who had vanished without a trace, leaving a haunting legacy behind, potentially tied to Sarah's own existence in ways she had yet to understand. "Those are the ones." Christina's voice trailed off, disbelief washing over her features. "No. They can't be your birth parents," she whispered, her thought cut short as Sarah turned to me, eyes wide with a maelstrom of raw emotions colliding. What if they are?" She's began, her voice barely a tremor, the implications washing over her like ice-cold water. "What if they never wanted me? What if they..." Before she could finish, her phone buzzed once more, an intrusive lifeline she could not ignore. I watched as sharp lines of uncertainty coiled around her expression. Sarah glanced down, and my blood ran cold as I caught a glimpse of the notification: "Meeting cancelled. We need to talk ASAP regarding sensitive matters concerning your adoption." And just like that, the ground beneath us shifted further, jarring our fragile equilibrium yet again, leaving Sarah teetering on the precipice of a truth that could unravel everything she had come to know or thought she knew about herself. The air grew thick with the oppressive weight of uncharted territory and unspoken fears, leaving us all questioning how deep the rabbit hole truly ran. Would Sarah be brave enough to delve into the depths of her origins, or would she pull back from the abyss, risking everything she had fought to reclaim? A moment hung suspended, fate teasing us with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Everything felt like a precarious balance of hope and despair, but one thing was clear: Sarah was on the precipice of discovery, and nothing would ever be the same again. The muted hum of anticipation settled back into the crowd as the lights transitioned from vibrant hues to a more neutral glow, leaving everyone fixated on the speaker's podium flanked by two elegant, poised figures. Thomas and Martha Jenkins looked every bit the part of the societal luminaries they were reputed to be, a polished facade that seemingly glittered in the warm light of the stage. But underneath that veneer, I feared, lay secrets dark enough to shatter Sarah's world. "Sarah, breathe," I murmured, feeling a growing urge to shield her from the turmoil brewing within her. I watched as she squeezed her eyes shut, clenching her phone like a lifeline, desperately battling an inner tempest of emotions. The crowd erupted into applause, drowning out her thoughts for the moment, but I knew they would only grow louder. When she finally opened her eyes, they were glassy but resolute. This was the moment she had chosen, the moment to chase after the truth that had lived in shadow. "I have to approach them," she declared without hesitation, her determination sparking a flame in my chest. "This isn't just about your lineage," I cautioned, feeling the chill of a deep worry creep into my heart. "It could upend everything." My words hung heavily in the air, forcing Sarah's gaze to mine, filled with a yearning to be understood but tainted with dread that I know the path is treacherous, but I won't let fear chain me down any longer, she replied, her voice firm yet tremulous, her eyes searching mine for affirmation. I nodded slowly, still wrestling with the pangs of caution intertwined with admiration for her bravery. As the applause faded and the couple took the stage, an unexpected wave of camaraderie rolled through the crowd, a shared experience of uncertainty bonding us in the face of this impending revelation. I leaned closer to Sarah, my heart pounding. If you feel even a flicker of anxiety, I'm ready, she interrupted, her resolve overwhelming my instinct to protect. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before I could utter another word of hesitance. And then the Jenkinses stepped into the spotlight, their faces affixed with congenial smiles, eyes scanning the crowd with that trained warmth. "Thank you all for your warm welcome," Martha began, her voice honeyed with rehearsed grace, drawing the crowd's attention entirely to her. "Tonight, we want to share the importance of family, legacy, and the compassion that binds us all together, regardless of where our journeys may start. Perhaps an awkward journey begins with humility." Thomas chimed in, earning chuckles from a few of the guests. "Adoption may not ever be easy for some, yet it is mired in such beauty and love," he continued, his words sweeping over us like a gilded net. Sarah's grip on her phone tightened as the air thickened. The notion of love felt impossibly far removed from the situation she was entangled in, and I could see a storm thrumming just beneath her surface. "Hang on," she whispered suddenly, alerting me to a shift in her demeanor. As if caught in a trance, she fixed her gaze on the speakers, her breath hitching once again. Martha gestured vividly, her words flowing like shimmering strands of silk. "Our own experience with adoption taught us to cherish those moments, a chance to give life to love where it seemed an impossible dream. So many people are waiting to be loved, to belong." The weight of those words settled within Sarah, casting shadows across her heart. "What if they're lying?" she murmured, shaking her head as if dispelling bad thoughts. "What if all they did was use someone else's pain to build their own legacy?" Before I could respond, the applause swept over us like a tidal wave, pulling Sarah in as the Jenkinses leaned slightly forward to bask in the reaction of the spectators. Instinctively, I felt that the world around us had dissolved. It was just Sarah and me, and the terrifying unknown ahead. She steeled her resolve, and as if guided by some invisible force, began to inch forward from our place amidst the cluster of guests. My heart raced. "Sarah, wait, I have to know," she pressed forward, thrusting herself toward the front of the crowd. I watched, panic flooding my veins, paralyzed by a mix of worry and admiration. She was stepping into the storm not just of confrontations, but of potential truths that could shred the tapestry of her life, and just then, a figure emerged from the throng behind Thomas and Martha, an unfamiliar person, shrouded in a slipstream of movement. Unlike the guests there for inspiration, they moved with a purpose, arms crossed tightly, an expression hard as stone. I felt a sense of impending dread, a new layer of complexity and anxiety added to the situation. As Sarah was about to call out to the Jenkinses, the figure caught my eye. They locked gazes with me, and within that instant, I recognized the glint of recognition, a long-buried memory surfacing with cruel clarity. The heartbeat of my own past entwined with hers, and dread surged within me. "Sarah," I choked out, but she didn't hear. The figure stepped forward, the crowd shifting obliviously, and as I grappled with the shock of their presence, a dreadful thought crystallized in my mind. What did they know that could potentially tear apart the fragile world Sarah was ready to confront? All I could do was watch as Sarah approached the stage, her heart pounding against her ribcage, poised to challenge the very foundation upon which she had built her identity. But in an instant, that challenging moment transformed into a cliffhanger, as the figure moved closer, a name slipping softly from their lips, that name echoing through the depths of our collective past. "Sarah, we need to talk about your parents." And just like that, everything we thought we knew trembled on the edge of revelation. The auditorium had become a living, breathing entity, inhaling Sarah's anxiety and exhaling uncertainty as she stood inches away from the stage. The crowd's applause lingered in the air, a bittersweet symphony overshadowed by what lay ahead. The moment had arrived, the moment Sarah had longed for, and yet she stood at the precipice of an abyss. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky but assertive, as she turned to face the figure, who stood with an air of restrained authority. The anticipation in the room shifted uncomfortably, like the tightening of a noose pulling us all toward the inevitable. My parents? She pressed, her courage beginning to flicker as doubt crept in. What do you know about them? The figure, a woman in an impeccably tailored suit, swept her long hair back and took a measured step closer. I'm not here to create drama, Sarah, just to provide some clarity. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some leaned in to catch every detail, while others exchanged bemused glances about this unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, I felt my heart plummet, uncertainty was suffocating, and the warmth of resolve had faded, eclipsed by shadows of the unknown. Please, just tell me, Sarah insisted, desperation lining her edges. All the weeks of stitching together fragmented pieces of her elusive past surged to the surface, now teetering on a razor's edge. You can't just drop this on me and leave. The woman hesitated for a split second, as if weighing the consequences of her revelation. Your parents, they might not be who you think they are, she stated, word by word, like laying bricks on an unsteady wall. For a moment, time froze, allowing Sarah to absorb the weight of the statement. It painted her expression with disbelief and an undercurrent of dread. What do you mean? She echoed, a tremor peppering her voice. But they love me, she began, but was interrupted. They adopted you under very different circumstances than what you were led to believe. The woman's gaze softened, and in that moment, I could see the flicker of something that was almost sympathetic. I know it's a lot to take in. They have kept secrets that could impact your future. A collective gasp rose from the audience, some faces painted with sympathy, others with concern, and others still with morbid curiosity. This was a whole new layer of turmoil, a fresh conflict that burgeoned alongside the shadows of Sarah's lineage. Everything she had fought for, every emotional battle she had waged to uncover the truth of her existence was suddenly reframed into a tangled web of doubt. Why should I believe you? She demanded, her voice rising to a fever pitch as the walls of her resolve began to fracture. My chest echoed her panic, disbelief coursed through our shared space like a cold wind, both invigorating and debilitating. Sarah, maybe we should step back, I started, but the words caught in my throat. The woman shook her head, a softness deepening her features. Because I'm here for you, not against you. At that moment, Sarah's pain wrestled with the anger of betrayal flooding her heart. It trembled within her like a storm ready to erupt, but she remained, a flickering candle against a gale. They loved me, she said, almost pleadingly. This is not a judgment on your parents, the woman replied, her tone laced with urgency. This is about your truth. You deserve to know who you are. The audience seemed to hold its breath, each heartbeat resonating with the uncertainty hanging palpably in the air. I wished I could reach out to Sarah, to pull her back to safety, but every pulse of her spirit pushed her forward into an abyss I could scarcely comprehend. Who are you? I finally asked the woman, finding my tongue as the moments swirled around us like dust dancing in a spotlit room. She turned to me, her expression somber yet resolute. I'm someone who believes in the power of truth, even if it burns like acid in the moments we least want to hear it. Before I could respond, an urgent thought coursed through my mind, a thread that would lead us down a path of perilous understanding. You know other things, don't you? I ventured, sensing an undertow of secrets behind her steady gaze. The crowd shifted again, and it felt as if the very foundation of our collective reality was beginning to falter under the weight of the revelations yet to pour forth. Things that could change everything, she replied, glancing at Sarah, who was now on the cusp of something monumental, in the brink of discovering identities woven not just of lineage, but of choices, consequences, and hidden pasts. As the reality of the woman's presence settled, my breath hitched. What if she carried with her the answers not just to Sarah's questions but to pieces of history we thought we had long buried? I can help you, the woman said to Sarah, her tone softening into an invitation. But the truth may not be what you hoped for. With that, I felt the atmosphere crack like a fragile facade, and a new level of dread settled in my stomach. This moment was charged with the heartbeat of impending revelations, weighing heavy on the edge of all that Sarah had strived for. As the words hung in the air, I suddenly caught sight of Thomas, his eyes flaring with an unexpected mix of fear and protective instinct. I knew that they wouldn't allow their world to be dismantled easily, and I began to wonder what lengths they might go to keep this truth hidden. Sarah. I called out, but it was too late. She turned back to the stage, the burning questions spilling out like a torrent. Tell me everything. And with that, the stage became a battleground, each truth threatening to rip apart the very fabric of who she thought she was, leaving us on an emotional precipice where every heartbeat signaled the dawning of revelations, dark and splintered with the light of hope. Inside the auditorium, the air felt thick with tension, the weight of unspoken truths hanging above us like storm clouds ready to burst. Sarah stood anchored at the edge of the stage, the spotlight now feeling both illuminating and blinding. I could see the flicker of emotions dancing across her face: confusion, anger, and an undeniable glimmer of determination. Tell me everything, she repeated, her voice steadier this time, fortified by an inner fire that refused to be snuffed out. But the woman remained silent, her gaze locked onto Sarah, as if gauging how much truth she could withstand. Sarah, I whispered, stepping closer. Please, maybe we should think this through. No. I need to know. She snapped, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and courage that brought a pang to my heart. What else can you tell me? The woman took a deep breath, exuding an air of calm amidst the chaos. Your parents adopted you under circumstances that didn't involve traditional motives. Their love for you is real, but it's entangled with secrets that intertwine with your very identity, she said softly, her voice almost soothing against the rising tide of Sarah's emotion. Entangled, Sarah echoed bitterly, her fists clenched at her sides. Each syllable felt like a lash against her hope, slicing away at the semblance of the family she knew. What do you mean by that? Did they choose me? Or was I a liability? The murmurs in the audience escalated into a quiet storm, curiosity and empathy swirling around like eddies in a stream. I longed to leap onto the stage, to wrap my hands around Sarah's and provide some semblance of comfort. But I knew deep down that what she needed now was the truth, however jagged it might be. There are many layers to your existence, Sarah, the woman continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You have a biological heritage that connects you to a world that is distant and possibly dangerous. This is not just about your identity, it could involve people who have a profound interest in what you represent. Danger. What are you talking about? Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing, brimming with frustration yet tinged with a thread of intrigue. Is this some kind of twisted game? No game, the woman assured, her features alight with earnest concern. I came here because you deserve the opportunity to make your own choices. This information could change everything, it could also put you in harm's way. I glanced around the auditorium. There were eyes trained on us, whispers softening but never wholly silencing. Would this woman's words ignite curiosity, or would they poison the ground beneath Sarah's feet? I wanted to scream for Sarah to step back, to take a breath before plunging headfirst into the unknown. But there was a fierce bravery in her spirit, a resolute will that seemed to yearn for the maelstrom of answers. Suddenly, a sharp chuckle broke through the tension, slicing through the undercurrent of dread like a knife. Thomas, leaning against the back wall, pushed himself off, his expression a conundrum of bemusement and challenge. You think you know how the world works, but trust me, you're just scratching the surface. Love, he called out. The audacity in his tone felt like ice, cold and unsettling. Thomas. I hissed under my breath, a panic rush flooding my insides. He was going to escalate this. But he merely stepped forward, staring intently at Sarah. You really don't want to open that box, he taunted softly, his swagger seeming to provide a mask for his anxiety. There are reasons why some things are better left unsaid. The truth may set you free, but it also may strip you of your very identity. Who are you to tell me what's best for me? Sarah shot back, her voice growing stronger, more defiant. It was as if each word poured forth a reservoir of unspent emotion, fueling the fire in her chest. I have a right to know what's real, you have a right to find your place in this world without being burdened by family legacies, Thomas countered, his eyes flaring with an intensity that dimmed the surrounding interest. His words hung heavy in the air, wrapping around the audience like a vice. No. Sarah shouted, crossing the stage towards him. I will not live in the shadow of whatever you're hiding. If my life is a lie, I deserve to have that truth. A collective breath inhaled from the crowd. I could feel hearts pounding in sync with Sarah's protest. While the truth might shine like the brightest beacon, I couldn't help but fear the storm it would unleash. "All right, you want truth?" he said, a dangerous excitement sparking in his eyes, shifting gears from predator to provocateur. "What if I told you this isn't just about your parents? What if I told you there are others like you? Others who've also been held captive by the very lies you seek?" The room fell silent. Every eye was now locked onto him. "You think you're the only one? You're just a piece in a much larger game." Panic rushed through me as Sarah's expression morphed from defiance to sheer confusion. What do you mean by that? Is it that shocking?" Thomas replied, smirking slightly, relishing in the chaos. "You could have been selected. Features, skills, there are reasons you felt out of place. And this woman?" He gestured toward the woman in the suit. "Maybe she's just the beginning. What if all the smiles and love were just a cover for a larger truth that you won't be prepared to hear?" Her mouth formed a small O, horror dawning in her eyes like the first traces of light before a dawn. The intricate threads of her identity began to unravel even further, and I felt my own heart race. "There's more at stake than you imagined, Sarah," he continued, and with that, the auditorium felt as if it were tilting, realities colliding on the precipice of discovery. "You may want to know who your parents are, but that's just the surface. The truth goes deeper. And I can show you." "Stop it!" I yelled, pushing forward but feeling invisible chains hold me back. "Enough with the intrigue and lies. This isn't a game," but inside, I was a riot of conflicting emotions, anxious yet curious, terrified for Sarah yet unsettled by the possibilities. As Sarah stood there, flashing between anger and fear, I suddenly realized we were standing on the edge of something monumental, teetering between the known and the unimaginable. As Thomas smiled, that wicked glimmer growing in his eyes, and the woman watched in guarded silence, I could feel the world shifting around us, reshaping our destinies in ways I could hardly fathom, and now we stood, not merely at the crossroads of identity but staring straight into an abyss of truth that threatened to swallow us whole. Sarah's truth was mere moments away, yet it felt like it was wrapped in shadow, laden with consequences we had yet to fully understand. The lights glared down harshly, amplifying the kaleidoscope of emotions swirling in Sarah's eyes: fear, disbelief, anger, and a fragile hope that trembled beneath the weight of impending revelations. Somehow, in the chaos of uprooted identities and revelations that threatened to rip her apart, I could sense a seed of resolve taking root. "Everything you say is just manipulating me," she challenged Thomas, her voice steadying, each syllable curving around her newfound defiance. "I won't let you distort my past any longer." The tension in the room crackled energetically, drawing the attention of every soul present. It was as if the very universe held its breath, suspended on the precarious brink of truth. What if the truth you seek leads you back to a family you cannot erase, or to a fate worse than you can imagine? Thomas countered smoothly, his mask sliding deeper into that of a puppeteer, pulling strings where they might cut and sever. But then, in an instant, the flicker of vulnerability had shifted dramatically. In the eye of this storm of emotions, Sarah stood taller, her chin raised defiantly. "You may think you're protecting me by keeping secrets," she said, shooting a glance at her adoptive parents, "but by lying to me, all you're doing is stripping me of my voice." A profound silence rippled through the crowd, underlining the gravity of her words. As she took a deliberate step towards her birth parents, I could almost hear the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, as if it too sensed the momentousness of her declaration. "You may not have been the family I imagined, but I refuse to live in fear of what you once share. You no longer control my story." Her voice surged, gaining strength as she stood resolute in the spotlight of her life, ready to confront the truth swirling in the shadows, but just as I felt a glimmer of hope, it was quickly extinguished as her birth parents' all gleaming smiles and polished exteriors exuded an unyielding silence. "Sarah," her mother finally spoke, her voice quivering yet imposing, "this isn't the way to navigate this. We adopted you for a reason. You must understand." "Understand what?" Sarah interjected, frustration threading palpably through her words. That I'm only the perfect image of the daughter you wanted? Or that my life is determined by a web of lies? There's more to it, her father began, but Sarah cut him off again. More? You think I'm supposed to trust you now? Trust that the love you claim to have for me is genuine while I stand here riddled with confusion over the lies you spun around my existence? Enough. Thomas suddenly burst out, splintered walls of bravado crashed down, as if he finally glimpsed into the wreckage of what loomed ahead. I can help you, but only if you're ready to face the consequences. In that moment, the air felt electric, charged with the heat of Sarah's determination mixed with the tension of the several realities converging. I could see it in her shoulders, poised to leap or retreat. I wanted to reach out, to ground her, whisper words of comfort amid this chaos, but it was clear this battlefield was hers alone. Help me? She replied without a trace of uncertainty, her voice ringing like a bell. More like manipulate me into a corner, just like you've attempted my entire life. Why would I place my future in your hands, knowing you've constructed a world filled with deceit? For a heartbeat, silence descended thickly once again. Then, just as I thought this turbulent tide would wash over and claim her outright, the woman in the tailored suit interjected, her earlier somberness morphing into urgency. Sarah, listen. I can guide you if you want to uncover the truth of your existence. You don't have to do it alone. Doubt flickered in her eyes as she stepped closer, offering the connection Sarah craved amidst the turmoil. But then I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. Christinite, once a familiar face and an unexpected ally, stepped forward, her voice trembling but powerful. Everyone here may have their own reasons for being involved, but let's not forget, Sarah, you are the one who must make the final choices. It was as if an invisible barrier lifted. The energy in the room shifted palpably as our gaze locked onto Sarah, who stood amidst the tension like an unyielding flame. Fine. I'll uncover the truth. The truth that belongs to me, she declared, her voice low yet unwavering, a rhythm beneath the chaos. If I have to face the shadows of my past, then so be it, she breathed, clutching her phone tightly, ready to gather her strength for the storm ahead. With every heartbeat, something shifted within her. I gathered my courage, stepping forward beside her. You don't have to do this alone, I reminded her, my voice steady, becoming a tether for her to grasp in this tumultuous sea of fear and uncertainty. Together, we might confront the chaos forged beneath Sarah's past, but then, with one swift movement, Sarah raised her chin, casting her eyes toward the Jenkinses. What do you hide from me? What conclusions should I draw from these tangled words you weave? I'm ready for whatever nightmares await me. As Thomas opened his mouth to respond, the woman turned to me, a look of urgency sparking beneath her calm facade, her words barely above a whisper. It's time to decide, Sarah. It's time to embrace your truth. The choice to step forward and take ownership of your story rests solely in your hands. At that moment, I felt the weight of the universe mingling between us, a fragile precipice poised on the edge of uncertainty. I sensed the whispers of the crowd echoing around us, their excitement and dread colliding into a singular moment charged with raw energy, each heartbeat a reminder of the vulnerability inherent in unspeaking wounds. And then, as if emerging from a fog, Sarah took a step, the shadows of her past dissolving one whispered heartbeat at a time. I choose to know, she declared, her voice echoing through the hushed auditorium, a declaration ripped from the depths of her soul, resonating like a bell-tolling finality. I will not let fear dictate who I am. Whatever I must face, I do it not just for me, but for every person who has fought to reclaim their own voice. An almost palpable shiver ran through me and the crowd, their expressions a fusion of awe and fervent anticipation. And just like that, Sarah stood at the forefront of an unfolding narrative, unbound from the past. In that dazzling instant, beneath the gaze of so many searching eyes, the air stirred with resolve and vulnerability intertwined, an unstoppable force of will igniting within her, a fire that would forge a new path wherever the truth led. And finally, as the whispers of uncertainty drifted, I whispered the words I had held deep within my heart all along, words built upon countless moments of shared laughter and pain, holding the impulsive wish that change was more than just an illusion. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Now and always. It was then that I realized what it meant to stand alongside someone as they claimed their strength. In that ephemeral moment, we breathed in possibility while the fierceness of the world fell away, leaving us with a single core truth. The light we uncovered together had the power to illuminate the darkest of paths, for the truth, while daunting, could be our salvation, rippling outwards like a beacon of hope that would endure beyond the confines of fear. "We rise together," I breathed, echoing the strength coursing beneath us, and as Sarah turned to face her past with fierce determination reflected in her eyes, I knew that while storms may brew, they would never extinguish the light of the truth she would now embrace. In that moment, I understood the gravity of our shared journey. No matter the shadows that lurked ahead, we were bound by an unbreakable thread of resilience and hope, the courage to face it all, heart wide open. And that truth, magic unfurled, it whispered softly beneath the echoes of our souls, reminding us that the bravest stories are often forged from the ashes of what we once feared to confront, and within those brave words lingered the promise: I choose to remember, and I choose to let go. I choose to embrace who I am becoming. The finality of her declaration pierced through the atmospherian anthem that settled into the marrow of my bones, riveting, echoing with profound clarity. In the depths of my soul, I knew then that in our shared journey, we were never truly alone.